Hey guys, my name is John Park and welcome to the Basics of Lighting. In this tutorial, I will be covering the fundamental rules of lighting and also understanding the basic forms and lastly, the application of lighting. So let's get started. So typically I like to start off with a 3000 by 1800 pixel height canvas. 3000 is generally good size to kind of get a painting going. If you're going to be doing a large complex painting, then I would highly recommend 4 to 4500 pixels wide. Yeah, so before we actually get into the painting, I want to show you guys just a couple of photographs illustrating the different lighting scenarios. So here we have 4 photographs, and each one showcases a different type of lighting scenario. In the first photograph, you can see on the top left-hand corner that this clearly demonstrates a top-lit environment. And the way we can identify that is the light, the sun, is actually being located on the top. And it's coming down, and it's describing the forms on the top surface of these rocks. So if you imagine like a box, and a box is being lit from the top, you can almost guess that the sides are not going to get as much light, so it's more or less going to be in shadow, or it's going to be darker. So that's kind of what this lighting scenario is. Here we have the classic backlighting. So the backlighting, we know and we can tell that the sun is actually back here, and it's hiding behind the object, and all of the objects here, including the rock forms, the mountain ranges, are actually being silhouetted here. So if you think about how this translates into a basic form, again, if we have a box and we have the sun being backlit from here, this box is more or less going to be lit only in the front side, and everything else here is going to be lit. It's going to actually be in shadow. So none of this is going to be lit. And the cast shadow here is actually going to be coming towards us. So that's what that lighting scenario would be here. Thirdly, we have directional lighting here. Now I know that you can probably not tell from the image. This is a little bit crunched here. But if I just bring up the contrast on this image, you guys can clearly see that the sun is coming in at an angle. It looks like it's coming in here, but it's actually coming in from the left, and it's lighting these rock forms. So you can clearly see that there's a shadow side right here, and there's a light side. So again, there's a shadow side here, and a light side. So just like using a box as our demonstration, imagine that the light, if we had a flashlight or the light was coming in from the left, that this side would be lit, but this side here is going to be most likely in shadow. Now depending on the angle of the light, if the sun is actually more directly on the side, we know for a fact that this face or this side of the box is going to be lit, but the top side is probably not going to get as much light, so we can almost kind of make an educated guess that this side is going to be more or less going to be in shadow as well. Alright, the last image here. So this is a very tricky one, and probably one of the most hardest lighting scenarios because it doesn't really tell us much about the form. This is called front lighting. Now the front lighting, the sun is actually behind us, and it's casting directly in front of the object, which is why this is called front lighting. So if the sun is behind us and it's casting the light in front of us, in front of these objects, then we're only going to get a little sliver of shadow if we're lucky, right? So this little sliver of shadow is it's only going to describe the shadow side, but for the most part all of this here is actually in light. So the quickest way to identify whether something's being front lit or not is try to pay attention to where the shadows are potentially laid in. So if the shadows are very shallow and behind the object, then you're most likely in a front lit scenario. And also the cast shadows are going to be behind the object. So if you see any cast shadows that are behind, that's also a front lit scenario. Look at this bush right here, or the shrub. The shrub is a good example of something that's kind of round-ish. We don't really see much description of the shadow on the actual object, but we do see a cast shadow. So this does tell us, or it gives us a good indication that the light is coming from the front. So if we were to translate this into a box, and we had a box here, and the box was more or less being lit from the front, we know that these two sides are going to be lit, but the back side we probably can't see, is most likely in shadow, and we're going to see a cast shadow of the box. So that's going to be showing. And also, depending on the angle of the sun, if the sun is lighting the top surface here, then all three sides are going to be lit in light. If the sun is lower, then only the front two sides are going to be lit here. Then we can safely say that the top side, as an educated guess, is going to be in shadow. So these are the different rules in different lighting scenarios. We got our top lighting, our back lighting, our side lighting, and our front lighting. Alright, let me show you guys one more diagram. And here I just have a very simple sphere. And the reason why I want to showcase this and showcase the application of lighting is so that we really understand how light plays on just a simple object like a sphere. So going with top lighting, I know for a fact that if the light source is coming from the top here, and let's say we have the sun beaming down, I know that this is going to be the light side. And we know for a fact that somewhere down here is going to be the dark side, right? So for a sphere, you know, since it's round, how do we indicate where the dark side is going to begin? So one way we can measure is if the light is coming straight down, such like this, then we can almost guarantee that the light is going to end here, basically where it can't wrap around the object anymore. So this is a good indicator that the light will stop here and the shadow will actually begin what is called the core. So we're going to have the core start here, and then the rest of the shadow side is going to be down here. Now for this demonstration, I'm actually going to only use two values, which is going to be light and dark. And the reason why I'm only using 2 values for this demonstration is so that we clearly understand the very, very basic and its most direct form of lighting. And we know for a fact that the cast shadow is going to be right below the object. So that's what we're going to get for top lighting here. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and hide this. Now let's go to our next one here, which is going to be our backlit scenario. So backlighting, we can say that the sun is more or less behind the object, and it's most likely lighting the front, this backside of the actual sphere. So what we're faced against is actually the shadow side. So I'm actually going to make a selection of the sphere, and this is what we're going to get. A very, very dark circle. And to further indicate that this is being backlit, the shadow is actually going to come towards us. And that's a good indicator that the object is backlit. So we can see a sliver of light here trying to peek over, but then this is mainly in shadow. And the shadow here is also coming towards us. So this is a good indicator of knowing whether or not your object is being backlit. Next, side lighting. So think of side lighting more or less like a flashlight, right? So if we have a flashlight here, and we were to point at an object, we know for a fact that this area is going to be receiving the light. So which means that the other side that's not receiving light is most likely going to be in shadow. So that's what side lighting is. And for sun lighting, when it comes to side lighting, it's just more directional. So if we have the sun on our left side here, coming in from the left, hitting the object, we know for a fact that we can use these angles to get a good guesstimation of where the light is going to end and where the shadow is going to begin. So it's going to wrap around the object here, and it's very similar to the way it's being lit, top lit, but it's just turned on the side. And this side here, on this side of the circle, is actually going to be in dark. But the shadow, however, the shadow is not going to be below it. It's actually going to be pushed way over to the right side. So this gives us a good visual indicator that the light is actually on the left, or it's coming at an angle, and the shadow is on the other side. Last but not least, front lighting. So front lighting is basically the light is shining on the object and it's hitting here, and the shadow is most likely on the back side, right? So it's the reverse of the backlighting here. It's going to be the exact reverse. So we can almost say that if the light is hitting here and the shadow is here, then maybe we can indicate that the shadow is back there just by giving a slight sliver of light. A slight sliver of shadow, I mean. So we're going to get something more or less like this. Oops, didn't mean to delete all that stuff. So we're going to get something more or less like this that's going to help describe the most direct and straightforward graphic representation of front light. Now, this doesn't really look like anything because we're just like, well, okay, well, how do I know that's being lit in the front? And again, we have to reconfirm that by showing that the shadow is actually behind. So it's going to be a combination of how you explain the object through through the shadow, but it's also a combination of how you explain the object through the cast shadow. So this is what's going to be able to give us a clear definition of what's being top lit, backlit, side lit, and front lit.